Don't.
Don't what?
Don't give me hope.
I'm sorry I couldn't give it to you sooner.
Sequels, sequels, sequels. After watching a great film or piece of cinema, it's only natural for the audience to want more. However, despite us wanting these movies to be good, they usually fail to reach expectations. So why is this? Why are sequels so hard to pull off? Well, for one, the biggest problem with sequels is that writers merely attempt to copy the plot of the first film. This comes off as lazy and unoriginal to the audience when the sequels are just straight up rip-offs of the original. Take the Hangover trilogy, for example. Each movie follows the exact same premise. The four friends black out for the night, have to get their bearings again, and make it back home before some big event the following day. You see, at least the first movie is new and fresh, whereas the sequels just seem illogical. It would just seem impossible that the same four friends would let their drinks get drugged 2 more times after the first. Nevertheless, trying to go down the same route as the original for the sequel is almost always a recipe for disaster. So now that we know what to avoid, let's now look at the elements that we do need to incorporate in a sequel in order for it to be good. And what better person is there to analyze than the greatest sequel director of all time, James Cameron himself. The man responsible for 2 of the most iconic sequels in cinematic history, Aliens and Terminator 2 Judgment Day, which some people consider to be even better than their original predecessors. And now that Avatar: The Way of Water has finally come out, I also would consider this to be one of the best blockbuster sequels of all time. So let's talk about the specific aspects of the film that make it stand out as such. Now, obviously there are some intangible factors, such as James Cameron being one of the GOATs in movie directing. I mean, his talent and ability to continuously have technological advancement in the special effects department to make his movies look outstanding is impressive to say the least. But here are some of the tangible factors of a sequel that everyone can use and learn from. These include continuation, escalation, and dynamic evolution. Without all 3 of these aspects taken care of, you can't have a great sequel. So, here's how to sequel. The first key aspect of a good sequel here is continuation. This means that the efforts and successes that the first film was about are continued to be the new challenges and hardships that the sequel is about. For example, in The Terminator, Sarah Connor's main objective is to survive and escape the T-800, who's trying to kill her because she's eventually going to give birth to the leader of the Resistance. In Terminator 2 Judgment Day, these things aren't just tossed aside as if they meant nothing in order to move on to a completely new situation. No, the struggles and goals of the first movie are built upon and expanded on in the sequel. It's not like now that Sarah Connor has evaded the T-800 that she's just gonna live happily ever after until her boy John Connor becomes the leader of the Resistance. Instead, those aspects are now given a new defining meaning. Turns out that because they destroyed the T-800, Skynet now decided to send the T-1000, which is even more dangerous, to try again. To put it another way, the defining challenges of the sequel can only exist thanks to the defining challenges of the first movie. If Kyle Reese never banged Sarah Connor, then John Connor would never be born, hence Skynet would never have to send the T-1000. The reason a sequel functions this way is because it uses all the main stuff from its predecessor, which is much better than if all the main stuff was just disregarded as if it wasn't important. Imagine if Terminator 2 Judgment Day had nothing to do with John Connor's survival, but instead, it's just a bunch of Terminators trying to wipe out the human military. Wouldn't that just feel misplaced? Wouldn't that just feel like a different movie entirely rather than a sequel? In order for the second movie to matter, the first movie has to matter within it. If the sequel doesn't continue what the first movie was mainly about and deal with the consequences of it all, then it easily becomes disconnected to the point that it doesn't even feel like a sequel anymore as much as a spin-off. In Avatar: The Way of Water, they don't just forget about the humans entirely and move on to fight sea creatures and monsters. No, they build upon the first movie. Ever since the Na'vi repelled the human invasion of Pandora by the Resources Development Administration, the RDA has since returned once again to Pandora to prepare for human colonization as Earth is dying. It builds off what happened previously, so it feels like a step forward and we're continuing the story. Jake Sully's defining objective in the first movie is to stop the Sky People from invading Pandora. In the second movie, the Sky People aren't just tossed in the back like whatever. No, the consequences of it all are very much in the driver's seat here. The RDA doesn't just give up or disappear. No, they come back and they come back stronger. The second key sequel strength here is that everything is escalated to feel larger than before, so that way it feels like a step up rather than a step down. For example, last time the main villain was Colonel Miles Quaritch, who was a human soldier that served as the chief of security for the RDA during the war with the Na'vi. Therefore, in the sequel, you can't just have another human soldier as a villain, otherwise it's just going to feel lackluster. So what can you do? How can you go above a human villain that's a soldier with a bunch of other soldiers working for him? Well, how about the same villain with the same crew, except for this time, they're all avatars. Now they're all bigger, stronger, and better versions of themselves, hence more dangerous. As a different example to better showcase this, let's take a look at another one of James Cameron's films, Aliens. In the first Alien movie, the villain is this terrifying creature that is stronger and more lethal than all the humans. So how can you surpass that and elevate the villain in the sequel? Well, how about instead of one xenomorph, there's multiple, and not just a few more, but a lot more xenomorphs, a whole colony of them. And how about there's a queen xenomorph that's actually bigger than the regular size xenomorphs like the one that appeared in the first movie? And how about the queen gives birth to all the xenomorphs? Yeah, now we're talking, because now it feels like in every technical aspect, we're going above the villain of yesterday. In general, the entire movie from beginning to end is escalation. It feels way grander than its predecessor, which is crucial for a sequel to be worthy of existence. Stuff doesn't always have to be bigger than before, but it does have to feel bigger than before, because if they don't, then you don't have a sequel that escalates the story and takes it to the next level. Look at Predator 2 for example. The first film is one of the greatest sci-fi horror movies of all time. But in the second movie, the protagonist fights the same monster from the first film, and there's no improvements or up in the stakes. So it just feels less epic than it could have been, and like they're using the formula of the first film. The last basic sequel strength here is that the dynamics between the characters in the first movie are evolved into new versions of themselves in the sequel, to make them feel fresh and realistic. Colonel Miles Quaritch, for example, is just a mean villain in the first one that doesn't really care about the lives of others, as we can clearly see when him and his men destroy Home Tree. In Avatar: The Way of Water, we come to learn that Quaritch actually has a son, and that his son is Spider.
NANI?!
This showcases a new side of Quaritch that we didn't know about before, and opens him up to be a more layered character. As another example to explain this more, look at the relationship between Jake and Neytiri. In the first movie, it was about them falling in love with each other and fighting this external evil that could jeopardize their potential future together. Whereas in the second movie, this dynamic evolves into a new version of itself where now it's not about them anymore as much as it is about the kids. Jake in the first movie is trying to save and protect Neytiri from the Sky People, and now in the second movie, he's trying to save and protect his children from the Sky People. If we look at Neytiri in the first movie, she struggled with getting Jake Sully to fit in with the ways and culture of the Na'vi. In the second movie, Neytiri struggles with getting her children to fit into the ways of the Metkayina clan. It's the same characters and struggles as last time, but just evolved and slightly different. Even though I found Avatar: The Way of Water to be a great blockbuster sequel, it's not flawless by any means. And there's one particular thing I want to talk about, which is Amrita, the anti-aging remedy found in the brains of the Tolkiens, which the humans want to harvest. First of all, this felt like a ripoff of the original plotline, which was that the RDA wanted to mine the valuable mineral unobtainium on Pandora. Second of all, if that's the direction you want to take the movie in, then don't introduce it at the midway point of the film, because then it just feels like it came out of nowhere with no prior buildup in the audience's mind. Then to make things even more frustrating, they didn't even take that plotline anywhere. They didn't expand on it or anything, and it didn't even become a vital part of the story. Anyways, that's my only issue with the film. Let me know what you guys thought about Avatar: The Way of Water down in the comments below, and as always, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace.